In the vast, sprawling theater of the Pacific War, one man's strategic mind cast a shadow over Japan's imperial ambitions. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, Commander-in-Chief of the Imperial Japanese Navy. Yamamoto was more than just a military leader. He was a visionary, a pragmatist, whose decisions had massive, lasting consequences that would redefine the 20th century. His strategic acumen was evident in the earliest terrifying successes of the Japanese forces. But beneath the surface of triumph, Yamamoto harbored a fundamental disagreement with his government, a strategic foresight that, had it been heeded, might have entirely changed the course of the war. This is the story of how one man's realistic assessment of Japan's capacity challenged an entire empire's dream of unlimited conquest. The apex of Japanese power. In January 1942, the atmosphere in Tokyo was nothing short of exultation and triumph. Following the surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the Japanese war machine seemed unstoppable. Japanese forces swiftly advanced across Southeast Asia, capturing key territories and instilling a sense of invincibility among the military brass and the public alike. The conquests were strategically critical. The Philippines served as a vital gateway to the Pacific, securing sea routes and control over the regional waters. Similarly, the capture of Malaya, rich in essential resources like rubber and tin, provided Japan with the materials needed to fuel its war effort. From the outside, Japan had achieved instant dominance. Yet, amidst the celebrations, Admiral Yamamoto was deeply concerned. He viewed the rapid expansion as a victory built on a foundation of sand. His strategic foresight recognized two core risks that no amount of early success could mitigate. First, the logistics nightmare. How could Japan maintain supply lines over such vast, newly conquered distances? This challenge alone could strangle the war effort. Second, the inevitable counteroffensive. Yamamoto, who had studied and traveled in the United States, knew their true capacity. He understood that America, despite its initial setbacks, was far from defeated and would mobilize its superior industrial resources for a conflict of attrition. This profound tension, Yamamoto's caution versus the intoxicating imperial zeal, was the critical, defining dichotomy of the Pacific War. Yamamoto's strategy was not about unending conquest, it was about survival. His core doctrine was the quick victory doctrine. Deliver a rapid, decisive strike against the U.S. Navy that would compel them to the negotiating table on Japanese terms. This perspective was rooted in a brutal pragmatism. He recognized Japan's finite resources and limited industrial capacity. A long, drawn-out war would simply be a numbers game that Japan was guaranteed to lose against America's vast economic might. The only path to success was a knockout blow, not a marathon. This realism fueled his vehement opposition to unlimited war. He believed such a protracted conflict would lead to resource depletion and ultimately catastrophic failure for the Japanese populace, who were not prepared for a struggle that could drag on for years. Yamamoto actively sought counsel, engaging in candid discussions with key subordinates like Vice Admiral Matome Ugaki. Together, they emphasized the urgent need for a coherent, pragmatic strategy that balanced immediate military objectives with the long-term, diplomatic solution. But his views often put him at odds with the leadership in Tokyo. Within the Imperial General Staff, the debate over future operations raged between the powerful army and Yamamoto's navy. Yamamoto proposed two highly ambitious, naval-centric plans intended to deliver that necessary, decisive advantage. 1. Attacks into the Indian Ocean to disrupt British naval assets and supply lines. And 2. Operations against Australia, which served as a critical, uncomfortably close Allied base for projecting power. However, the Imperial Army, favoring traditional land-based expansion, vetoed these aggressive naval plans. They opted instead for a conservative approach, consolidation and fortifying existing territorial gains. This decision, the rejection of Yamamoto's grand strategies, was a catastrophic missed opportunity. Japan walked away from its best chance to decisively alter the war's course, setting the stage for the inevitable confrontation that would follow. Since the quick victory doctrine relied on destroying the remaining U.S. carriers, Yamamoto initiated his magnum opus, the Battle of Midway, June 1942. His objective was simple: lure the U.S. Pacific Fleet into a trap and destroy them, ensuring naval supremacy once and for all. Yamamoto meticulously planned the operation, relying heavily on the element of surprise, using a diversionary attack on the Aleutian Islands to pull American forces north while the main fleet struck the crucial atoll of Midway. What Yamamoto didn't know was that his core assumption surprise had been fatally compromised. The critical factor that would negate his genius was American intelligence. The U.S. had broken Japanese codes, giving them intimate knowledge of the attack's timing, strength, and objective. While Yamamoto's fleets steamed toward what he expected to be an easy victory, the Americans were already waiting, positioned perfectly to ambush the ambushers. The battle was swift and devastating. In a matter of days, the U.S. Navy achieved one of the most remarkable victories in naval history. The Japanese suffered the catastrophic loss of their 4 primary aircraft carriers: the Akagi, the Kaga, the Soryu, and the Hiryu. This was more than a tactical loss. It was a strategic decapitation. It severely crippled Japan's striking power, shattered the pervasive myth of Japanese invincibility, and irrevocably shifted the balance of power in the Pacific. The implications were profound. Japan was forced to immediately re-evaluate its expansionist objectives. The naval capacity for wide-ranging offensive operations was gone. The United States, buoyed by the victory, now had the momentum and rapidly shifted to an offensive posture. Japan's strategy changed fundamentally, moving from aggressive expansion to desperate defensive consolidation and fortifying existing positions. Midway was the definitive turning point, a moment that ensured the war would become the protracted conflict Yamamoto had desperately warned against. The strategic shift was confirmed 2 months later with the start of the Guadalcanal campaign in August 1942. The U.S. aimed to deny Japan a vital base in the Solomon Islands and secure a launching point for future operations. The initial invasion achieved surprise, and American Marines quickly seized the primary objective, Henderson Field. The control of this airfield became crucial for establishing air dominance in the region. Yamamoto and Admiral Masashige Maeda led the Japanese response, initiating massive troop movements to reclaim the island. But now, the war was fought on Yamamoto's terms of strategic caution. Their efforts were crippled by the very thing Yamamoto feared: logistical failure. The U.S. Navy's control of the seas turned Japanese resupply runs into suicidal missions. Japanese transport ships and reinforcements, including the 2nd and 38th Infantry Divisions, suffered heavy losses. The flow of men and supplies to the Japanese troops fighting in the dense jungles of Guadalcanal was choked off. What followed was a brutal, grueling war of attrition. The Japanese launched determined counterattacks, most notably the Battle of Edson's Ridge and the Battle of the Tanaru River. Despite the Japanese troops' skill in jungle warfare, they were hampered by acute supply shortages and the lack of air support. They were met with fierce resistance from the well-prepared U.S. Marines. The casualties were staggering, and the Americans successfully repelled assault after assault. The Japanese willingness to commit massive forces without adequate support proved unsustainable. The strategic cost. Guadalcanal became a 9-month test of endurance and logistics. The Japanese forces were eventually compelled to withdraw. The campaign's outcome cemented the shift in momentum begun at Midway. The island loss forced Japan to accept the futility of their counter-offensive efforts and definitively adopt a purely defensive posture, prioritizing the protection of remaining holdings over any further expansion. Yamamoto's warnings were now manifesting as grim, bloody reality. Conclusion and legacy. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the architect of Pearl Harbor, was ultimately a prophet of defeat. His strategic foresight regarding Japan's industrial weakness and the impossibility of winning a protracted war proved tragically accurate. His entire strategic vision hinged on a quick, decisive victory, an opportunity that was irrevocably lost at Midway, a consequence of imperial zeal overriding naval caution. By rejecting his grand offensive plans and then failing to heed his warnings about American capacity, the Imperial General Staff walked down the only path that guaranteed national ruin. Lessons for today. The Pacific War, defined by Yamamoto's struggles, leaves us with powerful lessons. It underscores the paramount importance of logistics in modern warfare, the critical necessity of intelligence, and the need for adaptability in the face of evolving challenges. Ultimately, it highlights how the decisions of military leaders, the interplay of leadership, resources, and tactical execution determine the fate of nations. As we reflect on Yamamoto's complex legacy, we remember the man who correctly predicted the war's end, even as he was forced to command the losing side. His life serves as a stark reminder of the delicate line between ambition and pragmatism in a time of crisis. Thank you for joining us as we unpack the strategic decisions that defined this pivotal moment in world history.